All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. I've got 11 o'clock Eastern right now. So just for the sake of everybody's time, I know there's a few more people kind of filing in, but we'll go ahead and to keep things on schedule, get things started. So I appreciate you joining us today. So again, this is going to be our Learning with Leverage session today. That's going to be discussing the topic of staying ahead of the curve with the digital card innovation. So for those of you who don't know, my name is David Nettles. I'm the Vice President of Payments at Leverage Payment Solutions. I've talked with several of you all, and those I haven't, definitely look forward to having those conversations in the future. We've got a great guest here to lead us through the information here today. Just wanted to introduce him as well, and then we'll kind of get off and get started for you. Before we do the intros, just a note. If there's any questions on that, feel free to put those in the chat. There's something a little kind of quirky with the Q&A that's not functioning properly all the time. So I want to make sure all questions are captured on that. So as questions come up, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll definitely have some time at the end to go through and address all those questions as well too, and go through. So you don't have to save them at the end. You can put those to the chat, and we can address those when we get done. Or for those of you, if you want to send them to me, if you have my information separately, you can do that as well. That being said, we'll go ahead and kick off and do introductions. So I'd like to welcome Wes Suter from who's the director of OnDot services at Fiserv. I've worked with Wes for a long time, but for those who don't know, I came from Fiserv as well and had spent a number of years there. So he and I are former colleagues directly and now partnered together. So he's a great resource here to go through this as well too. Wanted to kind of go through and as we get through the webinar here, we're going to go through. So he's got Wes. I'll let you kind of do the breakdown here, but I know you've got over 20 years of experience in this field, in this space. Just wanted to welcome you in and go from there.
All right, perfect, David. Thank you. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to speak to this audience and the great partnership that we have with Leverage. David, I appreciate your support today on this conversation. As David mentioned, my name is Wes, and my role here at Fiserv is really to evangelize the idea of this expanded digital footprint of your card portfolios. My role and responsibility to partner with financial institutions and on this idea, because there's a lot of industry headwinds that we all feel as card issuers, and we think about how do we compete in this new age? How do we think about our mixture of products and solutions differently? And so that is what we're here to share today. I hope you find this as a conversation around empowerment and how we can help elevate that experience for your consumer base. And that's really the goal of today's conversation, is hyper-focused on that particular aspect. I want to kind of go through what we're going to discuss in this session today. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of exploring that consumer expectation and the shift that we've seen in retail payments. We'll expand on that idea of the expanded footprint of your digital card portfolio and how that compares to what I'll call them mega issuers. These are financial institutions that are in the, billions and billions in asset range. They have, multi-million-dollar budgets focused on expanding their card portfolios, building upon their digital platform. How do you, as a financial institution, compete against those mega issuers? And then we'll round out today's conversation looking at that engagement, what engagement means in this world of expanded footprint. But before I do, if you'll allow me to kind of pull on the thread of that consumer expectation. It's been nearly 2 months now since we celebrated Mother's Day. I can't believe it's been that quick, but shout out to all the wonderful mothers on the call today. In my household, anytime there's a reason for celebrating, we go to this old German bakery here in town, and they've got this carrot cake. And we must have ordered this carrot cake a dozen times over the past few years. My wife loves it, so naturally for Mother's Day, I'm going to go order it. But as a procrastinating husband that I am, I forgot to kind of pre-order it. And so here I find myself on that Saturday right before Mother's Day, and I've not ordered this carrot cake. I'm staring down the barrel of like 7,000 volleyball and soccer games across my 3 daughters. There's not a chance that I'm going to make it to that bakery, let alone have them have it in stock and have it available for the next day. So I do what any procrastinating yet resourceful husband does, and I get onto my DoorDash account. and I look up all the local bakeries here around me, and I see if any of them on their menu have a carrot cake. And thankfully, I was able to find a couple that did. So I use my DoorDash account, I order it, I have them deliver that carrot cake. I'll buy a different carrot cake to my house at that window where I was going to be home on that Saturday, so I could grab it, put it into the fridge, and have it ready for tomorrow. So I've saved Mother's Day, thankfully. What's the moral of this story? Well, as we think about that kind of that expectation of consumers, I was in a moment of need, and I needed convenience. And so I was able to leverage kind of that digital experience through DoorDash to have a carrot cake ordered to my house. Financial services are no different, right? As we think about how we manage and package our solutions, your product is no longer the services in which you offer, right? You can go through a list of all the things. You have debit cards and credit cards, and you have deposit accounts and savings accounts, and you have all these things that you can list out, but those are merely the services. It's really about how consumers interact with your brand. What's that experience that you are building for them to make their lives easy and convenient? I could have chosen any of those bakeries, but I chose the one that ultimately earned my business was the one that could meet me in my moment of need. So again, just kind of thinking about that in a broad sense around what does consumer expectations mean, and how does that apply to my institution and how we go to market collectively as an industry to really make it about the experience with your consumers. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about what those items mean. It probably comes as no great surprise that digital still remains king, right? Or queen. This idea that, the digital channel is the most effective and efficient channel for your financial institutions to interact with. Now, as part of that relationship is the card. Oftentimes we think about those two things separately, but more and more we need to think about them holistically. How does digital banking from both online and mobile banking correspond with my card offerings? How can I make those two things synonymous in my consumers' minds? So again, not a surprising idea that digital remains king and digital banking remains king, but we need to think about how does a card interaction include in there, which also means that when you survey leaders of community financial institutions, you'll recognize, and this survey augments this, that the digital engagement with the consumers remains the top priority for these financial institutions. If we can collectively as an industry engage these consumers, we can service them better, we can provide them more product, we can have a greater likelihood that we can retain or even attract new audiences. And so you can see from the survey that consumer engagement remains kind of the critical element on the top of mind of many leaders within our segment. The second thing I wanted to explore, and I've shared this with you and other audiences before, is just this idea of kind of where we were to where we are now. And as you look back pre-pandemic, you kind of see normalized spending behaviors, what I'll call seasonal spend, right? So peak season during the holiday, you usually have a dip in the activity in January and February. Tax season picks back up. You see another kind of elevated spike during back to school. So that's kind of what I call normalized seasonal spend. The pandemic comes at the end of 2019 and the bottom drops out. You have stores that are closed, restaurants that are closed. But what came out of this is kind of an interesting byproduct. You saw COVID act as almost an accelerant. And by that, I mean, yeah, there was some momentum of merchants introducing Apple and Google Pay checkout, introducing the ability to do an NFC-based transaction like tap and pay. You saw some merchants start to build their own proprietary applications where they would have these kind of integrated checkout features. So it wasn't as if those technologies and experiences weren't coming, but COVID acted as an accelerant. And so people didn't want to handle cash. So you saw those merchants introducing those point of sale checkouts. All of this kind of leads us to where we are now, which is on the good news is that we've got beyond pre-pandemic volumes for both debit and credit. And the orange line is indicating that debit growth and the blue line is indicating that credit growth. That's the good news, right? We need to make sure that we are meeting our consumers so that they are leveraging the technologies that make it easy and convenient for them to use. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those new expectations are in just a second. I found this particular survey interesting. It is not asking about community financial institutions, but really from a merchant's perspective. And the specific question that came from this Forrester Research survey said, what is your firm's plans to adopt the following payment types and methods? And so you can see it's broken down between online and in-store, and whether it's already been implemented or they're planning on implementing it. And I think what jumps out to me as part of this survey, especially that Apple and Google Pay, is just kind of that ease and convenience that digital payments have on consumers. And if merchants are saying, hey, we're going to accept these, and as a matter of fact, we're going to accelerate the acceptance of these types of digital payments, that means we as issuers, the ones that are actually issuing the cards, you and I, we need to make sure that we enable our consumers so they can take advantage of those types of. So I'm sure many of you, or if not most of all of you, are doing this with Apple, Google, Samsung, and the like. I would say reintroduce this, refocus your efforts to make sure your consumers understand that you take advantage of these, that they're secure, that they are convenient, and they're actually quicker than actually using your card plastic in many of those card present and card not present experiences. The last thing I'm going to share is really around this idea of payments and fintech. And there's a couple things I want to dissect here. This is an ITE survey, and you can see that they're really asking about, from a payments perspective, how much have you as a financial institution potentially lost to fintech competitors? And we often think of fintech as this kind of new 4-letter word, but it's actually 6 letters, but I digress. I think of fintech oftentimes is not so much as a bad word, is really a way to augment what you already offer. And as you take PayPal as an example, PayPal can certainly be kind of a competitive scenario, which is taking payment volume away from your financial institution, but it can also enable your card relationships. You can put your card onto your PayPal account. You can leverage your card relationship. You can leverage it from a reward standpoint. There are many ways that you can leverage these fintech platforms to your advantage, and not always thinking about them as the competitor, but often as an enabler. We see this kind of same idea and concept about losing volume or losing share from a depository standpoint, right? People are storing stored valued cards onto their Starbucks account. Well, I'm going to change that paradigm. I want you to think about Starbucks and PayPal as of losing deposits and shifting your focus on how do we enable our cardholders to really push our card relationships into those environments, into those both merchants and fintechs. As we move on, we think about all those concepts, right? Increasing consumer engagement, how the shift in payments has occurred. The importance of making sure that you are enabling your card portfolios into those merchant relationships in a post-pandemic environment. And this next concept I want to share with you, what does that actually mean? And as we think about the 3 key concepts of this omni-channel, card on file, subscription, recurring payments type of idea, we have seen this blow up in the industry where I take my card and I tie it to my Macy's account. I tie it to my Kroger account. I set up a DoorDash or an Instacart account. And at the end of each one of those account profiles, I have to set and establish my preferred payment credential. So as I'm setting up my grocery account at Kroger, I list all my name and address and my preferred, location of my Kroger account. But I have to put my debit or credit card that I want applied to any of those checkouts kind of associated with that. How do you build affinity and usage as a card issuer so that as your consumers are setting up these card on file relationships, that you attract that type of spend? Because as a consumer, once I've established that relationship with that card on file merchant, the likelihood for me to swap that out with a competitive card on my wallet is very, very low. These are relationships that are typically measured in years versus kind of, your standard, the next card up in your wallet. So getting that relationship established builds affinity and usage, and you as a financial institution earn that recurring transaction, and more importantly, the recurring interchange associated with that. The last piece of this conversation around consumer expectations that I want to fold back on is around rewards. And this is something that is tried and true. Many of you probably offer rewards. You may offer it at the card level. There may be those issuers out there that offer it what we call the account level. So based on a multitude of behaviors, at the end of the day, loyalty is really that critical component on why consumers use one card versus another. And as we think about this idea of fighting for your share of wallet, how do you make your card attractive? Well, it's around usage and convenience, but consumers want something out of their card. They want something back. It could be a miles component, it could be a points base, it could be a cash back. I don't really care. What I do want to share with you is that loyalty remains the top priority for many consumers on why they choose one card or the other. And as you think about how do these all marry together, how do you take a digital experience and a loyalty and marry this with card on file, all of this goes back to affinity and usage into your card portfolios. So with that as our foundation, let's shift gears a little bit and just talk about how does that experience differ to those mega issuers? And we do that through, and why I'm here is really, again, to evangelize this idea of expanding the digital footprint of your card. And we do this exercise through a platform that we built at OnDot called CardHub. And CardHub is the ability to just that, expand the digital footprint of your card. And it really comes down to three things that you need to understand about the platform. Number one, for those of you on the phone that issue both debit and credit, far too often as an industry, we've had disparate experiences. I've got maybe different call centers. I've got different servicing models. Worst case, I've got different digital experiences depending on if I'm interacting with my debit card as a consumer or interacting with my credit card if I'm a consumer. CardHub has the ability to unify that. So no longer do I have disparate digital experiences across card portfolios. We unify that for your consumer so that it is easy for them to interact as they migrate from their debit card to their credit card. The second is that this is intentionally a platform. And the reason that it's intentionally a platform is because I've just shared where we stand today in 2023 as it relates to consumer expectations. But that's not going to just be stale, right? We're going to see a shifting pattern. And we need, as an industry, as partners in this relationship of expanding your digital footprint, we need to be able to evolve with those shifting consumer expectations. So a platform that is iterative, that can meet the next generation of consumer expectations so that you can continue to attract and retain those types of cardholders. And then lastly is the ability to take that expanded digital footprint of your card and plug it right into your digital banking environment. So no longer do you need, as a consumer, to download two applications like Facebook and Facebook Messenger. Everything within CardHub fully integrated into your digital banking. So if you have mobile banking users, you have online banking, they have a one-stop shop that they can do all of their digital banking needs as well as their digital card needs. So those are the really three key elements: the unification of debit and credit, the iterative platform that we can innovate for next generation consumer expectations, and then probably the most critical piece is how do we make sure that it is fully integrated into your digital banking experience. That is the platform. Let's talk about, now that we have an idea of what the platform is, how does it compare to other mega issuers? And I broke this down into two components. The first component is consumers want to be able to use the card. They want to be able to use the physical form. They want to use a digital form. They want to be able to do it for in-person transactions, e-commerce or online transactions. They want things like rewards, and they want to be able to use their card. Maybe they even want to use the balance of the rewards points. So that is segment number one. How do we help consumers use their card? The second component we're going to dissect is this idea of help. And really what I mean is, how do I self-help? How do I serve or do self-service so that I don't always have to call into my bank or credit union? I don't always have to call into my financial institution or walk into a branch. I can do more of my interactions through my digital banking experience where my card relationships exist. We're going to touch on the first one relative to using the card. And what that typically means is that first lead foot. How do I make sure that I get my consumers to become purchase active as quickly as possible? And this idea of digital issuance, the ability to issue a card digitally. Now, many of you out there may be offering instant issuance at your branch. That's great. This can only be complementary if you are already offering a physical instant issue solution. But remember, the reason that digital banking remains such an efficient channel is because it has no geographical boundaries. If I'm a consumer of yours and I'm in Massachusetts and I'm down in vacation in Florida, I can't get to one of your branches for, to get a digital, a physical issued card. But what digital issuance does enable is that example where I can't get to one of your locations and I need, in my moment of need, a digital version of my card. Now, there are many mega issuers that are out there. Let's start with American Express. And I've just kind of given you kind of a juxtaposition between what some of these mega issuers are doing and how CardHub solves that same issue. Here's an American Express where, you can see in the outline that I say is you don't have to wait for your card. But here's a replacement card until the actual card arrives. And you can actually see the form factor that they have in step 2, which is, push that into your wallet so that you can begin using it. This is exactly what CardHub does. It has the ability to do a digital issuance of the card itself. Card plastic is still being produced at an output facility. It may still be being produced at some physical instant issue, but for those card holders that need a digital version of their card, making sure that you as the issuer of that card maintain that connectivity, you can now digitally issue a card. There are some nuances. I'll be transparent around kind of debit cards because typically your host system is the one that's generating and maintaining that debit card number. So in order to offer digital issuance, we'd have to make sure that your core is certified, and we can do that offline. But CardHub has that same ability that American Express does, right? Where in a net new PAN event, we can introduce the ability to digitally issue your financial institution's debit or credit card. On this same concept of use and digital issuance, and it doesn't have to be with digital issuance, is this idea of wallet provisioning, in-app provisioning. And that's exactly another feature a digital feature that CardHub does. But let's take a look at what it looks like from Bank of America's perspective. So here's a visual of Bank of America, and you can see down below it says add card to Apple Wallet. This is what we call in the industry as an in-app provisioning. I am inside of my Bank of America app. I can click on that add to Apple or add to Google Wallet, and that is what we call in-app provisioning. CardHub already does that, right? I can see the widget here where it says add to Apple Wallet. I can go through that pathway of adding my card to Apple or Google. And I can not only do that, but since it is actually leveraging some real estate from Apple and Google, we can establish your card, your debit or credit card, as that default card. So when I go and tokenize my card into Apple Wallet later on this afternoon, I go to Chipotle and I double click on my card. It is your card that is the default card for those Apple and Google Pay enabled transactions. The thousands of merchants that are out there that have Apple and Google Pay integrated into their app experience, your card is the default card for those transactions. So just like Bank of America, CardHub and that integrated experience into your digital banking solution can do an in-app provisioning. There are things as part of that sequence of digitally issuing a card, creating ease and convenience of the digital version, the use of the card is around viewing the card details. And so here's an example of US Bank where I can actually view the card number. I can do those kinds of things. Again, CardHub can do it too. And you can see that I can actually view the digital card details. It'll provide me my actual 16-digit PAN, the expiration, and the security value. Those are the three elements that I, as a consumer, need to conduct an e-commerce based transaction. So as you think about this idea of usage and convenience, how do we make your consumers' lives easier and more convenient? Well, David's laying around on Saturday night, and it's been a long week for him. He's always got his phone in his hand, but he realizes he forgot to buy a loved one a birthday present. He doesn't have to go halfway across the house, retrieve his card plastic out of his wallet. He can just dial up his digital banking solution, log in, click on cards, go through this journey, this digital card journey, and he's got everything he needs to facilitate that e-commerce transaction. Or better, he can leverage this viewing digital card journey as he's setting up his Kroger account, or down in Florida, his Publix account, his DoorDash, his Instacart account, right? That idea of card on file merchants, where at the end of that account opening profile, I need to tether my preferred payment credential. How do we get your card into David's hands so that he's using your card for those types of card on file recurring payments? So those are the use case scenarios. The last one I'll share on use cases around rewards, because CardHub does have rewards integrated with our You Choose Rewards program. But I wanted to show you how a mega issuer is incorporating rewards. And here's Capital One. And they've got within their world the ability to leverage the balance of their points and pay with their Capital One rewards as part of that PayPal checkout experience. You Choose does the same thing, integrated inside of CardHub, integrated inside of your digital banking experience, where now you can actually leverage the balance of your points, the value of your You Choose rewards balance, to check out as part of that PayPal, to check out as part of your Amazon purchase. So those types of experiences that make it easy and convenient for your consumers. Maybe they don't want to pay for the entirety of that $100 bill on Amazon, but they can leverage $50 of value from the rewards profile, and $50. And again, it would default to your card so that you can track that type of spend on the remaining balance. But again, just as Capital One does, CardHub can too, and so can you. On the help side, so that was the use. Let's talk a little bit about help. And the help comes down into a couple form factors that I'm going to share with you. And one of them comes back to that card on file merchant management. And I share with you kind of the Chase Bank experience. And what you'll notice is that Chase Bank allows their consumers to understand where businesses that have your card information. And they can do this because we can all pick up that authorization and understand that you've used your card at Amazon, you've used your card at Netflix, and we can see that authorization come through. Now, the way that Chase displays that Amazon transaction, if you can see that screen here, is that kind of normalized ISO merchant name, right? What you have to display for Reg E and Reg Z purposes is that Amazon Marketplace US, and then it's got all that gobbledygook kind of alphanumeric language behind it. Most of our layman consumers can probably pick up that that's Amazon, but it's still kind of a clunky experience to share with them that version. Not only can CardHub help consumers understand where their card is stored, so that we can drive that same type of usage and affinity, we actually leverage our enrichment transaction capability to clean up that merchant name, to apply a logo, to add context so that the consumer clearly understands who that merchant is. So not only can CardHub do it, but in many respects, we do it better than some of those mega issuers, which means you can do it better than many of those large issuers. So card on file is one. Things like travel plans, right? Instead of it being a workflow scenario where they have to call into your back office, Well, if you bank at Citibank, you can do this in a self-service capacity, and you can do that same self-service capacity within CardHub as well. So no longer do I have to call into my financial institution and let them know that I'm traveling to Paris, France. I land in Paris, I open up your digital banking application, I can do a self-service travel notification, even if it's on a Sunday morning and I know my financial institution's closed. This does a real-time call to that in a fraud environment, allowing that cardholder to submit a travel plan in a self-service experience. The next self-service that we're going to go through and juxtapose from to potentially what you could do with CardHub is really something that's been around for a long time, right? This idea that I've got to activate a card and I've got to set a PIN. For the last 20 years, right, let's call it, what I had to do in that instance is I had to make a phone call. I either had to call into the call center or I had to call into an IVR to activate that card. What Chime's done with their kind of slick front end is they've actually enabled the ability to say, hey, cards arrived, would you like to activate it? This is important for a number of reasons. Not only is it kind of driving towards that digital channel, but it's promoting Chime's digital banking solution, right? Because when they get the card in the mail, they have to go to the digital banking environment to actually activate their card. On the CardHub side, we have that same capability in market today, where you can see that image of the cards. The card plastic arrives in the envelope. I open the envelope. One of the things that we are actually seeing issuers do and promote is changing the sticker on the front of the card that says, instead of calling into the call center, although you still see some of that language down here, change it so that you're either downloading our mobile banking or online banking, or you already have it downloaded and we want you to engage with our mobile and online banking to begin activating that card. And you can see kind of an image of that activated card combined with setting the PIN. And again, you can do just as the Chimes of the world can do to facilitate cardholders doing more self-service, engaging within your digital banking solutions, and promoting those, highly efficient, highly effective channels of online and mobile banking. Last one I'll share with you, I believe this is the last one, is this idea of enriched transaction details. Now, this one's personal to me because I'm going to share with you kind of my personal experience of how this juxtaposition from a large issuer to a community financial institution was really elevated in my community space. So this idea of adding context to your purchase transactions, what does that mean, and how does it benefit the consumer, the cardholder, as well as you as the issuer? And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at it from, and this is my personal account. So at Fifth Third Bank, this is where I started my career, and I still have a banking relationship with them. And what I want to juxtapose here and compare and contrast is that when I did that transaction, you can actually see that this is still stating as a pending transaction for $5.38. It comes over as store number Kroger, store number 353. So keep that in mind, but understand that this is an unenriched experience. This is exactly what came through in the ISO message for that authorization. As I compare this to my CardHub experience, and this is my production version of CardHub, you can see how this same store, and I've got the store number down here at the bottom. You can see that Kroger 353, same exact store, how we can take that and elevate that consumer experience. And we can do that even in real time. So we don't have to wait for the transaction to post. We can actually do this for pending transactions. And you can see that we've taken that original merchant name, Kroger's 353. We've enriched it. We've applied a logo. You can see a orientation of a map overlay for this card present transaction. And we add context to that purchase transaction. And the reason that's important is because this is the main reason that that consumers call into your financial institution and they say, David, I don't recognize this merchant name. And it's this idea of transaction confusion, transaction inquiry, where they don't recognize the merchant name. And so how do we take that and solve that but making sure that A, we do that in real time, and B, that we give them enough context that they can in an instant understand whether it's legitimate or even illegitimate activity. And if it is illegitimate, they can go and they can do something about it. They could go turn their card off and any net new authorization would be declined. But the key is, how do I get in front of your consumer with this level of detail and context so that they can easily identify who that merchant is, if it was card present, overlay a map, and do that level of engagement with enriched transaction detail. So as we go through that compare and contrast to the mega issuers versus what CardHub at the community level can really elevate that experience, understand that you can too. There is nothing that they are doing with these big budgets and development resources that you can offer to your consumers. And if we do that, what is the impact to the financial institution? And it's this idea of accelerating engagement. And I think about that across two different prisms. The first prism is this, it goes back to that earlier study that asked leaders of community financial institutions what they were focused on, which is, how do I increase consumer engagement? And so what we did is we looked back in time. So we have clients that have been on CardHub. We have about 1,000 clients now that are financial institutions on CardHub. And we track their adoption from kind of a pre-CardHub to many months after the post migration to CardHub. And what is that impact from an adoption and an engagement standpoint? And for many of you that have a alert and control solution like CardValet, you'll appreciate this. But we had typically kind of a mid-single digit adoption metric with CardValet. As we introduced CardHub, the engagement model, the adoption of that expanded digital footprint of their card, was nearly 10 times as much as what it was kind of pre-CardHub. So as we think about a lever that we collectively can pull to elevate and enhance that engagement of your cardholders, well, the most purposeful tool in your arsenal is the card relationship. So if you can integrate that into your digital banking environment, introduce these types of expanded digital footprint of your card portfolio, you're going to have increased engagement. Again, provided that you can fully integrate that into your digital banking product. The other benefit, the other prism, if you will, is this idea of the impact that expanded digital footprints of your card has on spend. And spend equates to transaction volume, and it equates to revenue that's generated in the form of interest for those credit card portfolios, and non-interest income in the form of interchange. And so we did a study just to kind of look at the comparison of our clients under the Fiserv umbrella that had CardHub versus those that didn't. And I won't go through the entirety. It's pretty self-explanatory that, as the relationship with your card remains critical, how do you elevate that so that you earn your share of wallet across all of the other mega issuers that are in your consumers' wallets, and driving affinity and usage to your debit and credit card? As we wrap up today and getting to the question and answer section of our conversation, I want to leave you with three things. It probably comes as no great surprise that digital banking channel remains king. We talked about that earlier, but making sure that you continue to focus on expanding your digital card portfolio and that footprint to really meet and exceed those consumer and evolving expectations. Specifically, investing in areas that make it more valuable to your consumer base. How can you increase your use of digital issuance, token wallets, viewing of the digital card, the ability to leverage your existing rewards program, and enabling that type of experience for your consumer, and B, making more self-service real-time touch points to drive the ability to attract usage and spend. Think back to my carrot cake bakery story. Are you making it easy and convenient for your consumers to do business with you? Are you earning your share of wallet by enabling those type of experiences? And then lastly, having experiences has to be integrated into your digital banking environment. Gone are the days where we have companion applications where a consumer has to download 2 apps. Everything has to be inside of your online and mobile banking experience so that it is easy and convenient for your consumers to access. In conclusion to today's conversation, what everyone on this phone is really, really good at is relationship, high touch banking experiences. How do you take what you're already really good at and combine that with highly curated digital experiences with your card to really bring the best of breed to market, and going back to, you know, the experience that you deliver for your consumers. David, with that, let's go ahead and open it up to the chat to see if there's any questions on what we've discussed today.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Wes. Just kicking off, first one I see would be, can you elaborate a little more on how the digital issuance portion works, and as far as the card number for that, whether it's a temporary or a personal,
Yeah,
as
sure.
far as the plastic?
A couple things to pull on here. Number one is this idea of digital issuance really kind of came into our lexicon based on the launch of the Apple credit card, right? The Goldman Sachs issued Apple credit card, and they have the ability to digitally issue a card. And really what that means is they have the ability to tokenize the card into, in that case, Apple Wallet. And they have the ability to, present credentials of the card for the consumer to do e-commerce based transactions. Now that's a credit card, and I think that's an critical distinguishment, because on a credit card, especially in a full service credit environment, the system of record for a full service credit is typically that credit engine, right? We know the words of like Optus and Omaha, right? That's typically the system of record in a full service credit. When you talk about a debit card, the system of record is going to be the host environment, right? That's going to be your core that is generating and maintaining the card number. So what I share with that pretext with you, because those are different entry points into the card processing environment. And in this first phase of digital issuance at Fiserv, really what we're focused on is, think about it as a new PAN event, right? That could be a new card, like net new relationship. It could be lost stolen, where I'm reissuing a card and we're going to get rid of the old card number and we're going to provide that consumer a new card number. The way digital issuance works today within Fiserv is that the card number is the exact same PAN. The same one that's going to arrive in the mail in its plastic form is the same one that we present to the consumer in its digital form. So it's the same PAN, but what we do is we actually offer a temporary expiration and a temporary security value. And the reason we do that is because the card plastic is still being mailed and produced, and we don't want that card to be intercepted and have kind of the real versions of those kind of in an active status. Card arrives in the mail. I've got my true PAN, a temporary expiration, a temporary security value. That's how I'm tokenizing my card into the appropriate wallets. That's how I'm using my card credentials in its temporary form for e-commerce. When that card arrives in the mail, and you saw that activation sequence and setting PIN, as part of that, we will actually update the expiration and security value to their permanent forms, and update the token as part of that wallet provisioning as well. So we can get into more of this offline, but just take the same PAN, right? That's coming in the plastic, but we offer a temporary expiration and CVV code up until that plastic arrives and we activate that as a consumer.
Thanks, Wes. And I actually have a piggyback question on top of that one. So when that update is done, is that real time, or is there any kind of delay for that number being updated?
Yeah, and it could happen if they're activating through an IVR still or through a call center agent, or whether they're activating through CardHub directly. As soon as that card record is updated on the card processing environment, those temporary values will be updated to their permanent values.
Excellent, thank you. Also, do you have any updated current statistics for increasing of usage after going live with mobile wallets? Must be somebody with a newer tokenization.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I don't know if we've got. I'd have to look out to see if there's more broader industry statistics. Here's the challenge that we've always had, and we as an industry have always had with tokenization and push provisioning, is that for any Apple user, and I'm going to give you the context of Apple, but it's going to be pretty similar to your Google Android experience, is that today's consumer with your card, and I'm speaking to everybody on this phone because most of you probably do it this way. As an Apple user, I have to go into my Apple Wallet, and on the top right-hand corner is a plus sign. You click on that plus sign, and about the third selection down says add ABC Credit Union, debit or credit card to this. You would take a picture of the card as a consumer. You would enter those details in manually. There's two things at play here. Number one is your consumers having to consistently jump over that solicitation from Apple and Goldman Sachs to open up the Apple credit card. The other thing is that there is a friction point there where I, as a consumer, your consumer, has to take a picture or they have to add that detail in manually. And then from there is often what we call a yellow path provisioning path where they have to call into the call center or they have to get an OTP. In the world of Apple, the majority of that goes away because in CardHub, since we already have, so if you think about CardHub integrated inside of your digital banking, your mobile banking app, you click on cards, it'll actually identify that card has not been tokenized into the appropriate wallet, and you can do what's called an in-app provisioning. So I don't have to go through the wallet. I don't have to click on the plus sign. We actually feed the consumer's name and card number into the provisioning flow to minimize that friction. And for those Apple users, primarily, because Apple's a little different than Google in this regard, the majority of those Apple users can go what we call green path. They don't have to necessarily get a one-time passcode or call into the call center. We can equate a lot more of those to what we call green path. So the ability for it to be integrated into your mobile banking and then also have that integrated in-app provisioning should accelerate those adoption metrics. But I don't know if we've ever gone and kind of looked at it. It's a little early to do that. We hope to, get some of those data elements as we get further along. Really, the story I want to share with you is around if you can make it easier inside of your integrated experience and do an in-app provisioning, you're going to see greater adoption long-term into the Apple and Google Pay wallets.
And we have one more here in the Q&A. Do cards have to be manually added to CardHub when a member accepts terms for CardHub?
Another great question. It all goes back to, you've heard me say this already 1,000 times, ease and convenience. And it doesn't make it easy and convenient if we put a frictionful wall in front of that card holder. So the answer is no, they don't. What happens behind the scenes is that with that integration into your digital banking, right? You've got a digital banking provider. What happens is as a consumer clicks on the cards icon inside of their digital banking environment, the digital banking provider is actually sending us some unique information. So when David clicks on the card icon of his, XYZ digital banking experience, when he clicks on that card icon, the digital banking provider actually sends over to CardHub some unique qualifiers on David. And we at CardHub turn around and we say, okay, let's pick up all of the card relationships that David has on the Epic or Optus platform. And then we display them back to David. So that's a process we call preloading. So we preload the cards so as to minimize that friction. And every time that David does that, we're doing that same protocol and we're pulling back any new card events, we're pulling back any changes, any new transactions, blah, blah, blah. So we're doing all of that as part of that size each and every time. And again, it is solely meant to minimize the friction so that the cardholder does not have to manually add their cards inside of CardHub.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think that's all I see in both the chat and the Q&A. If there's any other questions, I know we're right up against it with the 45-minute time frame. Definitely want to thank everyone for joining, and definitely thank you, Wes, for walking us through great information on that as always. Definitely appreciate your partnership on that. I forgot, I should announce this at the beginning, so I apologize everyone, but we will be sending a copy of the deck to all the participants on that, and I'll be following up as well too with some other information and link to that as well too. So if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We will certainly be able to do any takeaways on that, but wanted to thank everybody for your time and attention and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.